Good evening, welcome back everyone. It is Friday night. The boys are back in town. We're back as the Three Musketeers. Richard is still recovering from obviously the unfortunate events of last week, and he's still not well. But Richard, I've caught it off of you, mate. I don't know if I've caught it down the mic,
mate,
or whatever, but I've got it.
Do you know what it is? It's an email virus, mate. That's what it is. I sent it over the internet.
I've been sniffing and coughing and spluttering all day.
Danny, I didn't open that email from you. No,
that's why you're all right, Danny. Don't open it, mate.
No,
it's got a virus in it. It's got a virus in it.
Always good. Always good.
Boys, we have got a hell of a lot to get through this evening. Good evening, everyone. Piling in over 1,000 people already on this lovely Friday evening. I'm not sure it's going to be lovely by the time we finish tonight, because I know that you two have both got something that is burning away, eating you up, and you want to get off your chest, and we've got so much stuff to talk about tonight. I intended for the main topic of conversation to be how Reform and Nigel Farage have been attacked this week by the real nasties, and we will discuss that, of course. But we've got news on some. I mean, look, first of all, we are now living in a country, right, where it can be more dangerous and more damaging to defend a man who fights against child grooming gangs than it is to defend those doing the child grooming. Now, I know that sounds absolutely crazy and almost unbelievable, but if you pop into London on any Saturday afternoon, what you'll find there is people supporting a prescribed terrorist organisation, and we'll talk about those two little angels that were so sadly sent back to Israel. What an odious situation that is. We'll talk about that later as well. But we've got, on a Saturday afternoon, we have got people dressed in NHS uniforms openly supporting a prescribed terrorist organisation, spilling their hatred and their anti-Semitism and their general hatred for the West, which is, by the way, the place they choose to live and work in. Now, the situation is, I mean, look, I'll tell you what, let's just take a little look at some of what I'm talking about here.
Which means the healthcare worker banner, the Thanet banner needs to go out the front, and everybody needs to come behind the banners.
Okay, I'm Gordon, I'm leading this march. I've done plenty of marches before. The police want us to say this side.
I mean, look, we don't have to watch too much of that, but you get the general drift, right? They're openly turning up wearing their National Health Service attire. Now, here's the thing. Can you imagine someone turning up to work at a hospital wearing a Free Tommy t-shirt or even a Reform badge? Can you imagine what the reaction would be? They would be hauled over the coals in front of management before you could say lawfare, right? Now, this is where I get on to what's happened in Gaza this week. We've seen that another absolutely barbaric display and some awful behaviour, where the bodies of two beautiful children, in addition, supposedly their mother, it turned out to be someone else. They've been returned to Israel, and the report that's come with it, guys, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't even want to read it out. I mean, Richard, I guess you've been following this. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, on the NHS side of things, there's something very sinister about that, Paul, because the reality is that those doctors, nurses, whatever they are, porters, I don't know what they are. I mean, all we know is they're dressed up in NHS scrubs. They are meant to be caring for everybody, for anybody that's got a healthcare issue at the point of need. So if we have a Jewish gentleman, maybe someone that's served in the IDF, maybe somebody that's got connections with Israel, or a Jewish lady that's pregnant and goes into hospital, what treatment are they going to get by those bigoted, hate-filled Hamas supporting animals. I mean, this is really worrying. We had this in Australia, where I think it was a doctor and a nurse made a video saying that they killed people. They actually said that. I mean, whether it was hyperbole or not, we don't know. All we know is what they said, right? So I think that's absolutely shocking. And I remember years ago, and this will give a bit of context. Years ago, there was a friend of mine who was an apostate. He was an ex-Muslim, and he was getting treated in Belfast in a hospital for a heart condition. And he was terrified that he was going to get a Muslim surgeon that knew that he was an apostate, and would have just, there'd have been a little slip of the knife and he would have been gone, right? And he genuinely believed that was going to happen, and he had to get a British or Irish surgeon to carry out the operation. That actually had to be arranged for him. So this isn't an imaginary thing. So it's more than just the fact that these people are in NHS scrubs and they're bringing the NHS into disrepute. Like you say, it might as well be called the National Hamas Service. Incidentally, remember where Hamas hid most of their ammunition and most of their tunnel entrances? Under hospitals and under schools and under mosques. Yeah. But the reality is with this, that it's extremely sinister that people are doing that and getting paid salaries by us, the taxpayer, paying them finally, giving them a right royal pension, and they're going on a little jaunt every, and it's not like they're going on a jaunt, you know, to have a picnic or to go and celebrate a football match. Well, they get policed a lot more heavy-handed if they were doing either of those things. But they're going there, celebrating and glorifying Hamas. And I mean, if you want me to talk about the Bebas things, I can talk about that now. Or do you want to?
Well, come on. Well, come on to that in just a moment. I mean, Danny, these people. I mean, Danny, do you think it's possible for these people, even though they hold these beliefs, is it possible that they can still treat people fairly and equally? Do you think that's possible?
Well, it was someone of another faith, shall we say, that done the operation on my ex-wife, and I don't think there was anything sinister at all. I really don't. I think that he done his best, what he could do. Ultimately, she ended up passing away from the treatment that she got in the hospital, regardless of who was to blame. But I don't hold him accountable at all for that.
But do you think that, I mean, these people that are featured
on a
in
march, they're on a march.
Well, these people on the march, one or two of them that featured in that video and that picture that I threw up, they're actually well-known agitators. They've not just suddenly turned up. They're there every week. That's
again,
part of their life.
It's a bit like what Richard said, isn't it? They could be porters. They could be, you know, I mean, maybe they are. Maybe they don't even work for the NHS. Maybe they've just got the scrubs and they don't even work there. Who knows?
Yeah, one of them is definitely a doctor. I've got to be honest with you, Richard. I've got to be honest with you. I would, even me, I will be frightened, because if they recognise you, you don't know what sort of treatment you're going to get. Now, the bottom line is this.
Yeah, 100%.
The bottom line is this, right, is that nobody should fear going into a hospital for treatment from the NHS, no matter what your background is. I mean, I wouldn't want genuine people that had real racism in their hearts treating people of colour unfairly. It would be vile. It's just unthinkable that anyone. I mean, imagine being Jewish.
Well, that's the whole point, Paul. You know, listen, I've got a lot of Jewish friends that you know that I've got to know over the last sort of 20 years or so, and you know, they are really, really afraid in the UK. They're really, and a lot of them are getting ready to go. You know, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them, because they're in living memory is the Holocaust. Yeah, and you know, and this is why we've got to stand against this. We've got to reason against it. We've got to argue against it. We've got to call it out for what it is. I'm sick of people saying this is, you know, pro-Palestinian or pro-Gaza. No, it's pro-Hamas. Hamas is what is Hamas. Hamas are involved in a lot of these events, right? We know they are on the periphery. They're involved, right? So the reality is that these are people who are supporting Hamas. You know, not everybody that goes on the march supports Hamas, but when you look at the hardcore elements, you know, Jeremy Corbyn called Hamas his friends many, many years ago.
I was going to say, I'll tell you what, Richard, I think you'd find it hard pushed to find anyone on those demonstrations or many people on those demos that would actually condemn Hamas. But here's the absolute irony of the whole thing, boys, right? Here's the real sick irony of it. These people who call Hamas freedom fighters, etc., are the same people that would describe people like us as far-right Nazis, because we sit here peacefully trying to resolve problems peacefully, trying to keep our people level-headed and make sure that we do everything right. They call us Nazis and fascists.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They describe monstrous murderers as freedom fighters. Now, this is where it gets a little bit sticky, this one, and I want to try and get this bit right from a respect viewpoint. I'm going to put a picture up now, which is very, very haunting. These are three beautiful human beings, two beautiful children, Ariel and Kiefer Bibas. Unfortunately, they've been returned home to Israel. The autopsy report on these two was just too horrible to read.
Well, let's get it right, Paul. They were murdered. They were murdered by Hamas.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that.
Exactly. By hand. By hand.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
by hand.
And
little
do you know what?
10 months. One of them.
What disturbed me about that? Both those little boys look exactly like my grandson. My grandson's little redhead. And honestly, when I first saw, I mean, my grandson's like 13 now, but when I first saw those little babies, you know, it absolutely. I went to the one of the first demonstrations against anti-Semitism in Parliament Square at the very beginning of October, at middle of October, when this had first started, and it was absolutely heartbreaking even then. And just seeing those pictures, and I've gone from heartbreak to absolute seething rage and anger, not just with Hamas, but with all the governments in Northern Ireland. The leader of Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland is boycotting going to see Trump. I mean, he's not going to really miss her, you know. I'm sure she'll have plenty more to do with the time. Is boycotting going to America as a protest against Trump's policy in Gaza. And incidentally, his policy is rebuilding Gaza and bringing peace. But, you know, these people, these leftists that support Hamas, they are absolutely evil to the core. And they need to be called out. They are Nazi sympathizers. Hamas is a fascist, religious fascist, Islamo-fascist, Nazi political party and military operation. That's what Hamas is. No ifs or ands or buts. That's not controversial. And these politicians, like Sinn Féin, many on the left, many in the Labour Party, many of those independent Muslim MPs, they are shameful apologists for anti-Semitic, Jew-hating Nazis. And that's just the truth of it. And that has to be said over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, this took my eye earlier on. I mean, it's very difficult for a lot of people, Richard, because we all sympathise with any children that are being killed, etc. But when you see this sort of attitude, how on earth does anyone defend this sort of attitude? Watch this.
شوف تاريخ ميلادي 7 أكتوبر ما شاء الله خليتوا لي إياه ذكرى كتير حلوة شكرا كتير
شو أغرب لعبة شفتوا أطفالكم بيلعبوا فيها؟ أكيد مش أغرب من ألعاب أطفال غزة. يجاهدوا المستقبل، إذا هيك ألعابهم، كيف هم؟
She's publicly thanking the terrorists there for the 7th of October attack because it took place on her birthday. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, and I just don't understand it. I mean, look at this from yesterday. I mean, most people have seen this. I'm not going to play a lot of this. I mean, I don't even want to watch it. What is going on in these people's minds?
It is evil. I think there's no doubt about that, Paul. We can say that you know what we're engaged in here, without a shadow of a doubt, is a battle between good and evil. And what you're looking at there is pure evil. Even the menacing way these people are dressed, and it is parading the bodies of little children. Let's get this right. They murdered those little children, right? They then exhumed their bodies from wherever they were and put them in adult-sized coffins, because obviously it wouldn't look right if they were in little baby coffins. They were in, you know, they weren't in small coffins, right? And paraded them through the streets of Hamas. And what did what did all these poor people of Gaza do? They had a party, brought their children to the party. Look at the dead Jews. Isn't it great? That's what that was about, Paul. Now, I'll be honest with you. I want to see Hamas completely and utterly destroyed. And I'm hoping that Trump and Netanyahu, once they've got all they're going to get in concessions off these scumbags, wipe them off the face of the earth. Hamas needs to be eliminated.
What concerns me even more, Danny, or equally as much, is, I mean, that leads us quite nicely onto the next topic, really, which involves, let me just get myself in order here a second. I mean, it involves things that have been going on at home. We talk about people that covertly support this nonsense out there. I raised this yesterday. Zara Sultana MP, with what I think is a 1930s style, that's Zara Sultana, the delightful Zara. You know, again, like I said, you know, no respect for anyone else's right to an opinion. Wants to call a counter demonstration or a meeting or whatever in Birmingham to flush out the fascists. Reform, fascists. The guy won't even have me and you in his party, right?
What does that make us, Paul?
Well, I'll tell you what is important, Richard. What does that mean that people like Zara Sultana think of us?
Yeah,
and what that is do to us.
This is the thing, Paul. This is why what we're doing when we look at these things, and this is really important. We've always got to give solutions. And you know, I'm not going to go into any detail whatsoever, but I was having some political discussions with some patriots tonight over here in Northern Ireland, and you know, we think we're getting a plan together. That's, you know, that we'll see how that goes. But the reality is, we need a political solution, and it needs to be radical. It needs to be cutting edge, and it needs to go right to the heart of these issues. And again, we're talking about reform there. I mean, there's the demonization of Nigel. Have reform got what it takes to do what needs to be done in their current format? Despite all the talk about democratization, I don't believe they have. And I know it's going to upset a lot of people in the chat. I'm not, you know, dishing reform, because reform's got a tailwind. They've got a massive amount of energy. But my goodness, do they need to take a leaf out of UKIP's book and listen to what Nick Tenconi's saying? Because whether you love or hate Nick, he has got the spine and the backbone to actually call this stuff out, and he's really going at it. And he's not saying anything that I wouldn't agree with, Paul. From what I've heard, Nick is on the money on this. And what I want to see is that stiffen the resolve of reform and bring them into shifting the Overton window. And Ben will do this as well. Ben Habib and the GB PAC initiative will do this as well. And the pledge will do it. And it's about bringing reform into the real world, because I've heard Nigel speaking. I watch almost all Nigel's speeches, and he's a great orator, but his content is weak and fluffy and lacking in specifics. And that is the problem with reform at the minute. And what I'm saying is, if we don't have a political solution in 3.5 years' time, we are in big trouble. And you know, so
we are in big, deep shit if we don't get the right result next time around. Thank you, Si Harris. Welcome back, the Three Amigos.
Thanks, Si.
Farty Pants has become a new member. That's not you, Richard, is it? Have you just joined?
Not at all, mate. Not at all.
Oh dear! Thank you very much, Farty Pants.
Thanks, Richard.
Oh, look, he's really
all right, mate.
Farty Pants. Someone can contact Marfleet at Woodhill HMP. Find out a list of what we are allowed to send Tommy in any way of an emergency care packages, so we can fill the prison. Please, we can't send him anything.
You can't send anything in at all, apparently.
You can't. That's just not the way it works, unfortunately. I mean, the best thing to probably do is go and support Urban Scoop. You know.
Yeah. Eddie Lee, glad to see Richard back on top form. I wouldn't say he's on top form. If he was a footballer, I'll tell you what, if he was a footballer, let me give you one of my football analogies.
Oh, here we go.
We're 3-0 down with 5 minutes to go. Richard's on the bench and we've brought him on just so he can get a feel of being on the pitch again. Does that make sense?
He's forgot.
Yeah, but you're forgetting what the score was at the end of that match. 4-3 to us. Because I scored a hat-trick +1 in the last 5 minutes.
Hayden, thank you. Tesbot, Hamas ideology rooted in Islam, despite many Muslims not adhering to it. Jackie Lee, thank you very much, Jackie. Trump said, all hell will let loose. Well, now's the time, and it could happen anytime. Will this can the Middle East ever be sorted out there, Danny? I mean, for me,
it hasn't been, has it, for many years?
It's impossible. The only way that they can sort this out is if both sides are willing to come to an agreement. And when you're dealing with one side that just doesn't want an agreement, it's impossible.
Yeah, it does seem that way, Paul. And how many years has this been going on?
Oh,
have they ever found a resolve yet? It's just carnage, isn't it? The whole thing's carnage. And like you say, those innocent children.
Yeah, it's terrible. Laurie N, thank you, Laurie. Look at all the far left rally compared to the United Kingdom rally. One is full of anger and hate. The other is just ordinary people with love for each other and our country. Absolutely. And here's the thing. When was the last time our lot, when I say our lot, us lot, whatever you want to call us, when was the last time that any of us organised a counter demonstration?
Never.
When it's never happened.
No, every time we get our date, Paul, they counter protest against that date just around the corner. With their minimal amount of people. We're not allowed, with their very minimal amount of people.
Nobody allowed. The only opinion that matters is theirs. That's the bottom line.
I think the other thing is, Paul, Nina, we don't care. We don't care about what they think, so we just do.
No, we don't care about them. No.
Yeah. So we don't.
And we don't want to put we don't want to cause problems for the police either. We show the police respect. And we do everything. To be fair,
you saw the last one, Paul. You saw the last one.
Absolutely.
They couldn't fill a broom cupboard with the amount of people that were there. They had more banners and signs made than the people to carry them. They were all just sitting there on the side because no one picked them up. Yeah. It's embarrassing. I'm going to be honest, it's embarrassing. They should really do their own demos and hopefully some more people can turn up to them to make it worthwhile.
Nina, thank you very much. I will stand by Israel and support them. I wanted to say more, but YouTube will not let me. Wonder why. Rest in peace, little ones. Yeah, thank you very much, Nina. Which brings me to this little mob, they shall not pass. Now, this is a reform. I don't know if you can read that. I don't know, Danny, your eyesight's probably a bit better than mine. Can you read it?
Well, Paul, basically, a friend of mine, Liz, sent that in to us today from North Staffordshire, campaign against racism and fascism. So basically, someone, just cutting a long story short, but somebody in the local, well, you can read it there, Staffordshire, I'm going to have to enlarge it, Paul, because I'm on a really small bit there, but
Yeah.
Staffordshire Moorlands Reform UK are holding meetings at the sports club in wherever that is. The club has been approached and asked to reconsider allowing these meetings to take place, but are refusing. Well, why should they refuse? It's just a meeting in their club.
They're being bullied. They're
Exactly
being bullied.
We believe community venues should take responsibility to not to host far-right organisations in their premises. Now, we're talking about Reform UK here, right? We're not talking about a far-right organisation.
Yeah.
What can you do? Leave a negative review on the club's Facebook page. Isn't that great? They're now trying to destroy the
Dirty
business.
work.
It's
dirty
just
work,
filth, absolute filth. And on Google too. Other local venues
Vile.
have cancelled meetings when they've realised that the community doesn't want them. Says who? Reform are getting massive, massive support.
No,
and
when the community realises, Danny, when the venue realises is that the moment they allow Reform to use their venue, they're going to get absolutely hammered on Facebook, on reviews, on Google. I mean, this is the work of vile individuals. Make no mistake about it.
What a dirty, disgusting, vile organisation that must be. And did you notice the picture you put up just now to start with, Paul? It's actually because a big group of them, but it was drawn because they can't draw that type of people in there. They're getting 4 and 5 likes per post, you know. And they're doing an anti thing for Farage at the moment. Who let's just, while we're on the subject of Nigel, you've got the likes of now Rupert Lowe. Obviously, Noel, our friend that comes on the channel, they can't align with Tommy, but they're not throwing him under a bus. And very, very recently, Nigel has come out when he was asked in the USA about Tommy Robinson. He's saying the solitary confinement's completely wrong. He's completely, everyone misunderstands it. He doesn't not like Tommy. So in effect, he's saying he does like Tommy. His treatment in the prison is inhumane. These are the words was used. And the visiting blocks that he's received, so the people being stopped visiting Tommy, is unacceptable. Now, Nigel's just come out with all that.
Yeah, I think we have. I mean, look, I think most people have seen the clip by now. I mean, I've got it here. I will play it. It's only very brief. I mean,
it's worth it.
My take on it is a little bit different. Let's have a quick look. I'm sure most of you have already seen it.
Mr. Farage, I'm from the UK. Hello, I have a question for you. Rupert Lowe says you don't have to hate Tommy Robinson because he's exposing a lot of grooming gangs. So what is your point on that? Because you question sometimes his criminal record on TV.
Well, he's got a very long criminal record. I don't hate him. And by the way, he shouldn't be, whatever I think of him, he shouldn't be in solitary confinement. I hear he's in very bad conditions, and, and that's not right.
Yeah, he is allowed to see his ex-wife and
that's not right.
Thank you.
I mean, look, fair play. I mean, he has to get
Vicky.
in the criminal record.
Well done, Vicky.
Well done, Vicky. He had to get in the criminal record bit again. I mean, but I mean, look, let's be fair, right? We've moaned at him before when he's thrown him under a bus. He didn't throw him under a bus there. In fact, he said what we were wanting to say. So my problem, boys, right, is that why doesn't he bring that up himself? Because, you know, if it was anyone else, he probably would be. So come on, Nigel. You know,
I've written to Nigel. I've got an automatic reply, obviously no reply. But look, right, Rupert Lowe is starting to talk about things. Obviously, Noel, you know, comes on the channel and we openly discuss things. Look, in all fairness, Rupert and Noel, they must be getting the okay from Reform to say that. Or let's just say they're still in the party. They're still in the party.
Yeah. I mean, look, Richard, I know you're probably going to be even harsher than me, but what I would say is that I think that, to be fair to Farage, he does have a difficult position in the respect that, look, whatever he says, the media are gonna try and hammer him. I think to one degree, you know, he might be looking at it like this. He knows he's already got our votes, or most of us anyway. Won't have Richard necessarily, but he knows he's going to have most of our votes anyway. He's got to win the middle ground. The bloody BBC watchers, that's what's on his mind potentially, and he's maybe using Rupert for the stronger stuff. He's maybe using Richard Tice for the net zero stuff. We don't know. But Richard, your opinion on it?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I thought that was great progress. I'll be brutally honest with you. I thought fair play. You know, he said he shouldn't be in solitary confinement. He said he's been treated appallingly. He said it's not right. He kept saying that. So I think that's massive progress. Because look, at the end of the day, if we look at Nigel's rhetoric a few weeks ago, it was so negative about Tommy. Now, I think Nigel's realised he gets no strategic advantage from attacking Tommy. In fact, what he said there, a lot of people. Now, I'm not won over to Nigel because, you know, again, I've got political. It's not with me with Nigel. It's not actually about Tommy, right? I think the way he spoke about Tommy previously was appalling, and I've called him out for that. But I think what he said there was fair, and he gave Vicky. I mean, if you notice, if you watch the whole clip of that, the guy behind him, the security guy's pointing at Vicky because obviously she's there with a big urban scoop mic in her hand. You know what I mean? So anyone with any wit that's doing security know that's a Tommy Robinson team. You know, so the significant thing about this is two things. One, he was not. He said he's got a criminal record. Well, that's fair enough. That's true. You know, at the end of the day, if that's what he wants to talk about, that's
now.
Yeah, exactly.
He's in prison now. It's not hard to work out.
Exactly. So I mean, you know, he's kind of stating the obvious. But I think what Nigel did do there, which was good, and I wish he'd done it months ago, when he said, "Look, he shouldn't be in solitary. He thinks he's being." I think he said it's appalling what's happening, and it's wrong. So those things there are very important for a party leader of a party that is possibly going to be in government after the next election. So I took heart from that. Now, there's a lot of other things I'm not taking heart from within reform, but I think that's progress. And look, what our job is, right, with what we do, is to inform the reform voters that, look, everything's not rosy in the garden. You know, there are other options out there, and we've got to drag reform into the space that they need to be to do what Trump's doing in America. Yeah. Now, as Elon Musk said, well, I mean, he wasn't as gracious as I'm going to be. Is Nigel the man to do that? Is Zia Youssef, even more importantly, the man to do that? I'm very concerned about Zia Youssef. So, you know, are they the men to do it, or should it be Rupert and Ben and maybe, you know, some sort of and I keep saying this coming together of all the political forces on the right wing.
See, I agree, Richard. Richard, I agree with that. Where I sort of slightly disagree with you is when you say there are other choices. What other choices are there?
Well, the reality is Ben's working in the background at his project. Now, it's not a political party, but I reckon if we're in a situation where Reform and Farage are completely compromised by lack of policy, by swinging. I mean, let's get it right. Reform are tracking to the left, Paul. You know, even, you know, GB News commentators are saying that. These guys are tracking to the left. You know, the Mike Grahams and the
is that again playing devil's advocate, though, Richard? Isn't that what they've got to do to win that ground that they're going to need to get to win the election?
If you mobilise the Brexit voters, if you mobilise people that have never voted before, young people, your Bricky, your Spark, your Cabby. Let's get it right. A lot of working class people do not vote because they go, what's the point? They look at those scumbags that are occupying most of those green benches and go, I want nothing to do with any of them, so I'm not even going to get involved. If we can get, and this is the point, if we can get the unregistered non-voters who are really the backbone of this country, a lot of them, to get them involved in politics. I mean, I would love to see a demographic split between, you know, working class guys that are on the tools. How many of them vote compared with university educated people? That'd be a very interesting thing to find out, because those guys that are on the tools and those, you know, working mums and those guys in housing estates that have really got very little future, if you can get them energized and mobilized and get them involved in the political process, then you don't need to worry about the preferred demographic or about lefties or about the centre ground, because you have and that's what Trump did. Trump mobilized the working classes. He mobilized Black America. Trump got the Arab vote voting for him in Michigan. You know, so what we've got to do is look at what Trump did and see how much of that we can translate. And Trump compromised on nothing. Quite the opposite. In fact, he got more hardline. And as soon as he's got into power,
the only thing is, Richard, is that British people are very different to Americans.
Yeah.
Well,
our culture is
we
different.
we are and we aren't. I mean, you know, yes, there's a lot. I mean, for me, I wish we were a bit more like the Americans. I wish we had second amendment right to bear arms, or whichever one it is. You know, but we should be a lot more American. But the reality is the Americans are our cousins. They're our nearest relatives, along with the Canadians and the Aussies. So we've a lot in common. And, you know, I think people are going to start waking up to the very real jeopardy that we're in. And I think that's what our job is to do, is to say, listen, and I'll appeal to anyone watching this. If you're not registered to vote, please register to vote.
100%, yeah.
If you haven't signed the pledge, please go onto thepledge.org.uk and sign the pledge, because that will get you engaged in the political process. And we don't pester people with the pledge. We send out one email a month or something. We're not hassling people. But get yourself registered to vote and then look at the political parties that are out there.
Richard, if you don't register to vote, you're part of the bloody problem, not the solution.
If you don't vote, not even that. If you don't, because a lot of people register to vote, don't even, they're registered, don't even vote.
Going back to reform, is Nigel playing a very clever game to get the votes? When he gets in, he can change the policies. Look what Labour have done. They've promised the world, and what have they delivered? Carnage. Absolute carnage. So when they're in number 10, reform, which is highly likely, let's be honest, at the way it's going at the moment. And
I think it's a shoo-in, personally.
I think, and then they'll start installing their policies. They've then got control. And I think that Nigel could be playing a very clever game to get in. And then there's control, isn't there? Well, this is what we originally said. We're going to do this. We're going to raise this. We're going to reduce that. We're going to stop immigration.
Danny, you put that well. I mean, I guess that's what I was saying, Richard. By the way, we've got well over 5,000 people watching again on a Friday night. Thank you so much, guys. I mean, amazing numbers. Really appreciate it. Please give the show a thumbs up. I suppose that's what I was saying, Richard. You know, is he? I mean, look, he's a very experienced politician. He's been in this game for over 30 years. Now, if I was advising Nigel, again, we're playing devil's advocate. There's no point in us sitting here all agreeing all night, right? If I was advising Nigel, it's possible that you might say, well, look, Nigel, you know what? You've already got your hardcore vote. You got 4 million voters at the last election. They're done and dusted. They're ours. They ain't going nowhere, right? Well, let's say we lose 500,000 of them because you piss off a few Tommy fans, right? What we need now is we need to go back to like a Brexit 2 vote. We need to appeal to all those Middle Englanders. Many of them might vote Labour. Some of them might vote Lib Dem. Some of them will be ex-Tories. They watch the bloody BBC. They've never heard of Paul or Danny or Richard. They need those votes, don't they, to win the next election?
Well, either one of the things you said, is true, or none of them, or one of them's false. So you said it's a shoo-in that Reform are going to win. Well, if Reform are going to win, they don't have to play the game. They can do a Trump and say this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it anyway. If they're not a shoo-in, well, then they've got a problem, and they've got to try and find that extra cache of voters from somewhere. Like I say, I think what was turnout last time? Was it 59%? Somewhere in the 50s in the last election. Now, we've got to remember, even as late as I think the the early 90s, the turnout was around 70%. And going back historically, sometimes it was up to 80% turnout, right? So if we can energize, and I think the other thing is, Paul, I hate to say this, but I think by the time the next election comes, this country is going to be in such a mess because of what the Labour Party's done, because of the open borders policy, which I was talking to a guy tonight. Actually, I was down at the demo We did a bit of a free Tommy demo down in my hometown here in Northern Ireland tonight. And we were talking to some guy that was walking past, and he used to work at Heathrow Airport, and he said this was 25 years ago. He worked in logistics. So those big trucks were coming in that had gone across the channel. It's 25 years ago, and when they got there, the sides were bulging with people that had basically been smuggled in. And as soon as they got out, they were either legging it or trying to get asylum. That was 25 years ago. So when we talk about mass migration and we talk about, 1,000 came across in boats. No. 1,000 came across in boats and got caught. How many came on small boats?
Lorries,
how many came in lorries? How many came as walk-ins on the ferry? We just don't know how many people have come into the country because our borders are so porous. So, there's a lot of people think we're over 72 million. There's people talk about 72 million in 5 years' time. A lot of people think we're over 72 million now. The problems facing our country are going to be so mammoth in a few years' time that it is going to be a political battle of Britain. And we don't need a Neville Chamberlain. We need a Winston Churchill. And, where is that man? That's what we've got to ask. Who is he?
Well, it's the thing. This is where the conversation gets really interesting, and I hope it is for the viewers as well. And there'll be some there agreeing with you, some agreeing with me. And again, like I said, Richard, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm trying to get a conversation going.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I like a lot of the things Nick Tanconi says. I think Nick says a lot of things that a lot of people feel. But here's the big but, and it's a massive but. Nick's rhetoric would not win Middle England, and you need Middle England to win a general election. And that is, that's the bottom line. Where it doesn't matter whether you like what Nick says, whether you like Nick, whether you like UKIP, whether you don't. The bottom line is that harsh rhetoric that we all like and enjoy and we all want to hear.
Yeah.
I'm afraid it ain't going to win Mr. and Mrs. Smith that live at number 59 and watch bloody Newsnight.
Yeah, and I think, look, I mean, the reality is I'm on the NEC and UKIP, but I think the truth of the matter is that we know that it would take an absolute miracle to win for UKIP to win the next election. It's going to be it's a party that is basically Nick is trying to breathe, and he's doing quite well actually. I must say, there's a few months ago there was some of the stuff Nick was doing with megaphones. I didn't really like it, right? And I was very clear about that to people in the party. So I'm not saying anything out of turn. But I think in the last few, and I hope I'm not speaking too soon, but I think in the last few months, certainly since Christmas, that his rhetoric's changed. He's a lot calmer when he's speaking. He's saying it in a lot more measured way. And I listen, I agree with everything that he's saying. Everything that he's saying. I can't find one thing he said that I disagree with. So in terms of UKIP, I think the reality is that UKIP are not going to win the next general election. But what UKIP could do, if they get a good enough head of steam, is pull reform into a different orbit. If UKIP get 100,000 members in double quick time, right? Which isn't a massive thing to do. If they really went for it, it could be possible, especially given the circumstance on the ground. We never know what's around the corner. We never know when the next horrendous incident happens. We never know when the next absolute assault on our freedom of speech happens. We never know if Starmer's going to try.
Richard, interrupting you, it's happened now, hasn't it? Today.
Yeah.
Freedom of privacy with Apple.
Yeah.
So the UK government have been putting pressure on Apple to be able to access its citizens' messages and camera roll. And Apple have backed down. This is the biggest breach of privacy in Western civilization's history. Our privacy has gone. And this is a UK government. Do you know what? The next general election should be the easiest victory in political history, because the Labour Party have destroyed themselves in this short term that they've been in. What are they going to do in the next 4 years that they've got left? Britain will be unrecognisable if they serve full term. Simple as
there's one thing.
And if we don't get them out, Danny, we'll never get. If we don't get them out in the next election, we'll never get them out again because
forget it.
The new voters that they're importing, and that's why they're bringing these people in because they're going to get them citizenship. They're going to get them voting on board.
Here's the problem. The problem, right, is that between now, Labour already have 3-4 million guaranteed votes. Guaranteed
at the moment,
maybe 6 million, maybe 6 million.
Maybe 6. By the time we get to the next general election, that could
10.
be 7 or 8 or even 10.
I think 10. Yeah.
Right. So
that's right.
This is the problem that we've got. It's not the British people that are voting for Labour. It's the non-British people that are voting for Labour, and that really is the concern. JD Vance, let me just run through one or two of the supers, guys, because I've got a few there. Thank you very much. Devon7, the NHS shouldn't be pushing ideology of any kind as it's dangerous. I agree. They're supposed to provide care. That's where their remit begins and ends. Absolutely 100% agree with that. Paul O'Keefe. Ben Shapiro said on his pod today that Israel put far too much stock in hostage returns. That disgusting ceremony yesterday could have been an opportunity. Cheers from MAGA in the United States. Thank you very much, Paul. Rob, Sultana is a current. Kenny, thank you, Kenny. The irony of these pro-Hamas, these pro-Palestine supporters that call us fascists and Nazis show their support every day for a country that were allies of fascist Nazi Germany during World War II. Look, it's the biggest smokescreen ever, isn't it? The biggest smokescreen ever. Thank you, Olga. Cheers, Eric. Really appreciate that. Lauren, hi, guys. Can you speak to Tom's team to set an email up and post asking all to email their MP calling for Tom's release and carbon copy in the email address so they have copies of every email we send? I know that they're very, very busy working on a lot of good stuff, hopefully. Thank you, Lauren. It's a great idea. Jackie, lads, what did you think of Elon on stage with a chainsaw? I saw the picture, but I've not had the chance to read the story.
It was hilarious. It was absolutely. Listen, I love that whole team that's around Trump. I think it's absolutely superb what they're doing. And I mean, if we've got time to talk about what he's doing with the Ukrainian thing as well, I mean, he's just not missing anything. He's scoring every single basket, isn't he?
Yeah. Jason, the Palestinian martyrs should be ashamed. Thank you. Dave Young. Hi, guys. Paul, are you inviting others on in this call? Not tonight, unfortunately, Dave, but I will be in the week. I tend to do that during the day. We've tried it at night. Unfortunately, you get caught out at night when one or two people have been on the old tipple, been on the bottle or on the sauce. They've had a couple of shandies and it can get a bit warm. Excuse me. Laurie N. Someone needs to find the balls to bring Tommy up at Prime Minister's question time. I wouldn't hold your breath. We're trying hard, yeah. Paul G, get real. It's reform or bust. Simple. I agree, Paul.
I agree with Paul there. I'm afraid I agree with him. Yeah.
Andy, naive boomers think that you can vote out of communism. Nina again. Thank you, Nina. Boys, did you hear? See that postal? Did you hear that postal votes have been opened by the post office, and then some forms were shredded? I'd believe anything, Nina.
I would. I mean,
I really would.
You know, I think, Paul. I think the thing is with the voting and election, whatever happens, and we can go around the houses with reform and all the different options and bringing this sort of this grand coalition together that Nick Buckley talked about. But I think that the reality of the situation is Trump said this, it's got to be too big to rig. And what we've got to do in the next election, and that's why, man, do we need some good leadership. the election needs to be too big to rig. I mean, if I knew there was a party out there that was absolutely 100% representing our views and would win, you know, we would put unequivocal support behind it without any question, you know, and that's why it's so important doing what we're doing. But it's got to be too big to rig. We've got to have a majority that is, you know, in the millions. I mean, that we, you know, it's got to be. But if 70% of the population, Matt Goodwin says 70% of the population pretty much believe what we believe. Okay, the voting population. Yeah. So if that's the case, that makes it too big to rig. But what you've got to do is get every single one of those people on the same page. Every single politician, Conservative, Reform, UKIP, whatever Ben's doing, you know, every single politician has got to be.
I'll be honest with you. I think when the time comes next time, Richard, I think a lot of people will unite. But what I would say is that everyone always says to me, "What can we do? What can we do?" We keep saying it. You said it earlier on, Richard. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you vote.
Sign the pledge.
Make sure your friends and family are registered to vote. Sign the pledge. So there is work to do. Look, guys, we're 50 minutes in already, right? And we still got stuff to go through. I did a quick poll on the channel yesterday. My polls get massive. I mean, look, what did we have on that? 37,000 votes.
Brilliant.
37,000 votes. I mean, I don't know why they pay all this YouGov and all that. They might as well just give us a shout, boys, mightn't they? Right? Look, which news organisation would you like to see closed down most? Other 3%, Sky 2%, LBC 5%, the BBC 90%. Now, someone tried to catch me out, Richard.
Yeah,
they said, "Oh, you believe it's in free speech and you want to shut down news organisations."
Well, it ain't a news organisation, is it?
No, it's not. It's a propaganda. It's a propaganda organisation.
It's a propaganda. I mean, listen, it's a propaganda.
It's like I've always said. You know, you know, the BBC are not our friends. I mean, anybody that thinks that the BBC are on side. I mean, my goodness, you know, you're living in.
Well, what about this? I mean, what an absolute sham that was. This tear-jerking, bloody one-sided documentary they've now removed.
Yeah. I mean, the BBC just continue to do it. They just continue to do it. You know,
they never let you down, do you? What was this? Oh, this was Rupert Lowe's reply to Zara Sultana. At Reform, we are everything you are not: patriotic, decent, civil. We are in Parliament to represent our constituents of our country. You should try it occasionally. You might enjoy it. Please do remember, you are the MP for Coventry, not Gaza. Act like it. Well said, Rupert Lowe.
Well said. Rupert's smashing it. Rupert's absolutely smashing it. Brilliant.
Yeah, he's doing well.
Yeah. By the way, guys, just a quickie. On Sunday, a date for your diary. You're in for a real treat. Our dear friend Liam has a fabulous podcast with another dear friend of ours, Howard Cox. That's coming up on Sunday over at Liam Tuff's The Dozen podcast. Put a note in your diary. Do not miss that one. I've spoke to Liam this afternoon.
Howard's looking younger than Liam, isn't he?
Well, do you know what, mate?
He looks fresher.
I'll tell you what.
Happy with that.
Liam would like the haircut. I know that.
That's what I'm saying. He's got
a bit of bad news. A bit of bad news, guys. The petition that I tried to launch over at the .gov website to free Tommy and to release political prisoners, surprise, surprise, after a month, has been denied. Sorry, we cannot accept your petition, government intervention for Stephen Lennon's release, blah, 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 blah. In other words, get lost. Yeah. Sounds about right, doesn't it?
Have you got that? Have you got that thing, Paul? Have you got that thing from John McDonnell ready to post up or not? Have you not?
I haven't got it. No, let me just. I haven't put it on the computer, but let me get it up. John McDonnell.
This is the type
MP.
Of stuff we're up against. Well, I don't even think he's an MP now. Didn't he lose his whip in Labour? He voted against the. I think he voted against the.
Anyway, this is his
benefit.
This is his reply to one of his constituents. I don't work as an MP on the basis of who I like or not like. Mr. Yaxel Lennon is not a political prisoner. He absolutely is. I understand he's in prison for contempt of court, and that the arrangements for the serving of his sentence are in place to ensure his physical safety. If Mr. Yaxel Lennon considers he is not being treated properly, he should contact his own MP to take up these concerns. I mean, he just wasted.
Who was that? Was that John McDonnell? John McDonnell.
Yeah.
Well, let's get it right. I mean, he's in the camp that would rather send us probably all off to the gulag anyway. So he probably wants us all.
He's in the socialist campaigning group, isn't he? Yes.
Oh, he's extremely far left. I mean,
very. He's Jerry Corbyn's best buddy.
I mean, these people are hard. We've got to understand that we've got hardcore communists running the country at the minute. There's been a communist takeover, and everyone that voted Labour. Right, if you're watching this and you're a Labour voter, I know I'm going to offend people, but you should hang your head in shame because you're responsible for this. Simple as.
Who are you going to offend, Rich? Surely even hardcore Labour voters.
Ones.
Hanging.
Yeah, couple of quick ones.
Surely.
Boys, before we round up tonight, a couple of quick ones that I want to get through before we close up tonight. Jonathan, thanks for becoming the new member. Julie, I hear the prison has stopped Katie Hopkins' scheduled visit to see Tommy. God bless him. And stay safe. That is absolutely correct. She was stopped from seeing him yesterday. I can't read that. What does it say?
Who should we write to about Tommy's? Who should we write to about Tommy's conditions in prison? Draynell McCall, £5 gift.
Richard, can you bring up what we discussed earlier? It would or not? No, don't if you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean the problem is we don't have an address for where Tommy lives, so writing to his MP is problematic. I think if you wrote to every MP in the Luton area, then one of them would be, would probably be somewhere not too far away, I would imagine. But I think we've got to be careful about that one.
Yeah.
Because we don't.
I mean, look, Tommy's team has put out another appeal tonight saying, look, no demonstrations. Right now, we got to sit tight and wait for the legals. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. But no, writing to the MP's fine. Writing to the MP's fine.
Yeah, writing to the MP's fine, yeah. Nemo Navnight, get candid with Lubna up, please, and Alex Phillips. Lubna, we can get on. Yeah, I've been speaking to Alex, so hopefully we're going to be doing something soon. Steve S, admit we are at war within an ideology. Deport it. Simon, AfD postal votes in Germany being shredded. That wouldn't surprise me. It's this weekend, I think, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, if there was an election, I think it was in Romania. It's hardly been covered, and the results got cancelled because it wasn't favourable to the European Union and to the globalist liberal order. So this is everything is getting extremely sinister. I think countries that mess with democracy in such a blatant and obvious way as happening in Germany, as happened in Romania, I think they will, they'll do so at their peril, because sooner or later, if people realise they are absolutely getting shafted and there's no other option, that's when things can get really messy. So, if anyone in the British establishment is thinking about trying to mess with the next election and trying to stop us doing what we're going to do politically, do so at your peril, because the reality is that can't happen. And this is what's going on. People are trying to subvert democracy, and it can't be allowed to happen.
Yeah. Guys, thanks for the supers tonight. No more tonight now. Thank you very much for those, because I want to dive into the regular chat, and also we've got a couple of subjects to go through. Jonathan, thank you very much. Kenny, Paul, I think the Met Police, ex-Met PC Norman Brennan, who wants to get our streets back, will be a great guest on your show. He probably very well would be. Andy says homeless and cold. Andy, I might be in Brighton tomorrow. Drop me a message in the morning, my friend. David Crosby, 3 soldiers of God, Paul, Danny, Richard Onwards, lads. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I can't read that name, Danny. Richard,
yeah.
What is it?
Drainal McCall.
Drainal McCall. Can you give a quick rundown of how Tommy's being treated so I know what to bring up? Well, basically, he's been denied visitors. He's been denied access to the canteen. Quite simply, he should be in a Cat D prison and not a Cat B prison. Take your pick.
I think what's got to happen is Nicola Markey, whatever her name is, Markey, has got to realise that, if anything happens to Tommy, it's going to be on her, and she's going to be the one that's going to be brought to book for it. So she's the governor, she's the woman in charge, and she's got to realise that Tommy cannot be treated unfairly and justly, or be in a situation where his physical and mental health are at risk because he's been starved or he's been deprived of basic things. Even something as silly as GB News on Freeview. Now, GB News, it's one of those things, we love it and hate it at the same time, don't we? But Tommy has been deprived of even GB News. He's had all sorts of issues. They've got to stop treating him like this. And everybody watching this, email Tommy, get in touch with Tommy, encourage him, lift his spirits, tell him that you're thinking about him, that you're praying for him, and write to your MPs, write to the Justice Ministry. What's her name, Paul? You keep saying someone Mahmood. What's her first name? I can never pronounce it. Shabana
Mahmood.
Mahmood. Write to Yvette Cooper, who's the Wicked Witch of the Home Office, and write to that limp-wristed, wet Prime Minister that we've got, Keir Starmer, as well. They've all got to get bombarded all the time with letters, and obviously you see it there. Email a prisoner, get in touch with Tommy in the prison, and encourage him and tell him that the country's behind him and the whole country backs him. He knows that anyway, but let him know.
Let's just run past a couple of last things, guys, before. Look, JD Vance. He's brilliant. I love JD Vance. I think he's fantastic. He said yesterday, was it yesterday or today? I think it was yesterday, that America and Europe share the same values, but if we don't keep up our own values, how can we have values that are shared anymore? Or worse to that effect. I thought it was a great comment. But I did want to end up tonight, because I know that you in particular wanted to mention this, Richard. Russia, Ukraine, the situation out there. What's your take on the way things are shaped?
Well,
I
think
Zelensky seems to be losing a lot of friends.
Oh, he's losing his grip. I think the reality is, Zelensky's been living in a delusion. I don't know whether it's because he's got no military experience. Apparently he's some sort of cross-dressing comedian before he became president. So, he's a bit of a weirdo. But the reality is, he came to power on a peace ticket. He was going to be the man that was going to have peace. Then obviously the war started, and he put combats on and started walking around like a pint-sized action man. But the reality is, his military strategy has been catastrophic. There was an off-ramp about a year into the conflict, or maybe even 6 months into the conflict. Remember, the Russians, when they first invaded, cocked it up massively, and that the Ukrainians were holding ground. They were doing fairly well. It went from that to a war of attrition. And, the reality is, it is literally just a numbers game. And if the war carries on, Ukraine will not win, because the Russians have more resources, they have more firepower, they have, it doesn't matter how many Challenger tanks we can give to the Ukrainians, how many Storm Shadow missiles, they're not stopping the Russian advance. And even if it's only very gradual, the Russians will get more and more territory. In fact, really, the longer it goes on, probably the better it's going to end up for the Russians. So really what needs to happen, for the sake of just not having dead Ukrainians and dead Russians lying in a battlefield that are dying for nothing now, there needs to be a ceasefire. And the reality is, the pragmatic reality is that Russia will keep the territory it's got. And that's hard, because at the end of the day, Russia did illegally invade the country. What they did was wrong, and it shouldn't have happened. But the war of attrition that's happening at the minute is unwinnable by Ukraine, unless America, Europe, America and Europe do not have the resources to do this. Did a massive land invasion or put massive resources and basically got into a war with Russia that could very easily end in World War III and a nuclear war and all of us dying, right? Yeah. So what Trump is doing,
probably not the best option then, Rich.
Not the best option, right? What Trump is doing is absolutely right. Because the first thing he did, he went to the Russians and said, we need to talk. Now, we don't know what the nature of those talks were. Look, it's not just, Trump wasn't even in the room. It was Marco Rubio and other security experts and diplomatic experts that were talking to the Russians. That's good because, do you know something? Dialogue's a lot better than conflict. And people could learn that right the way throughout the whole of, civilization. There'd have been a lot less body bags filled, wouldn't there? So talk jaw-jaw's better than war. At the end of the day, the Russians aren't going to give up Crimea. They're not going to give up those eastern regions of Ukraine, and Ukraine hasn't got the manpower to push them out. So what happens? If there's a ceasefire now, and I think there will be a ceasefire in weeks, because at the end of the day, Trump is putting that much pressure on Zelensky, and it doesn't matter what Keir Starmer says about throwing British money at it. Thanks for asking us in your manifesto, Keir. It doesn't matter what Keir Starmer says. It doesn't matter what the French say. We haven't got the boots on the ground to put in there. And even if we did have the boots on the ground, we can't get into a hot war with Russia because there's consequences for that. Because let's get it right, our country is within striking distance of those hypersonic missiles, and we can't shoot them down. So we're defenseless, right? So we've got to be pragmatic. And if Trump gets a ceasefire where things kind of stay like they are, well, then you get into, if the conflict continues as a low intensity conflict, you get into a situation that's very similar to Northern Ireland, where you've got something like the SOE behind enemy lines, low cost, low intensity, but ties the Russians down for 10 years, at which point the Russians might go, actually, this isn't really working for us either. But we can't have a hot war with Russia, and Zelensky is not going to win. So what Trump's done is absolutely right. And Zelensky does need to wind his neck in and does need to remember that the American taxpayer has given him billions and billions of dollars. And like, Elon Musk
said, a lot of it's gone missing, apparently, isn't it?
Well, this is the whole thing. Apparently half of it's disappeared. So half of it I tell you what, if 350 billion quid just going missing, that's sloppy. I'm not the best accountant in the world, but if I lost 350 billion quid, I would be in a lot of trouble.
You want to know where it had gone? Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, look, the main thing is that the bloody dying stops, and that somehow all these young Russian men and Ukrainian men stop.
Let's get it right. Putin is not a good man, and he's not. What he's done is wrong, 100%. Invading a country is not a good idea, and killing hundreds of thousands of your own soldiers. So I'm not a Putin apologist. I don't think Trump is either.
No, absolutely not.
But the reality is the killing has to stop. And this is not World War II. This is far more like World War I. And it is completely pointless slaughter at the minute. So get a peace process in place. See what you can get out of the Russians, because obviously America's got other pressure they can put on the Russians as well. So there's carrot and stick. And I think let Trump do what he's doing. And all these pipsqueak politicians like Macron and Keir Starmer, just wind your necks in and just do what the Don tells you to do.
Yeah, exactly. Simone says, glad to see you back, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Simone. I appreciate that.
We are coming towards the end tonight, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I mean, I've enjoyed the chat tonight. We've gone through a lot, probably too much, to be honest, because we could have, maybe settled into kept to one or two subjects and gone for them. But look, I'll end with this and then give you guys the chance to have your say. As far as I'm concerned, with all war, whether it be out in the Middle East, whether it be in bloody Europe, what does it solve?
Nothing.
Wars always start with a bullet and end with talking, right? So why can't you just cut the middleman out, forget the bullets and do the talking? Be bloody easier, wouldn't it? And all life lost is just terrible. Danny, what have you got planned coming up? Anything good?
Well, no, Paul. I mean, I'm waiting for a date to visit back to the UK, but that's forthcoming hopefully next week. Nothing really, mate. Just working hard at the moment, you know, in sunny Spain. Very warm at the moment.
What's the weather been like?
We're having 25s, 26s, that sort of temperature. Don't want to rub salt in the wound, but, you know, it ain't a bad life, mate.
Let's have a look at this. What does this say? Darren, Paul, I'm paying a service to send Tommy emails and also for returns. Surely if they don't allow Tommy to receive it, it's a scam. Look, they charge you on that system. Yeah, they charge you on that system to send an email and you pay for a reply and you don't get them. So, yeah, I guess it is a kind of a scam. Yeah, I want my money back. Richard, final word from you? Exactly.
It's just good to be back, boys. The boys are indeed back in town. I think that was a great live. I think the fact that we did lots of subjects was fantastic because it keeps people interested. We covered a lot of ground. We were just four old geezers, 3 old geezers just having a chat in the pub. And that's what it's all about, Friday night.
Well, 2 old geezers and me.
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. I wasn't old until last week.
So we're going to end with over 5,600 people watching across all 3 platforms. So thank you again so much. We'll be back in the week, and what we'll be doing next time is we'll be inviting you guys on. Come and have your say. Just lay off the drink before you come on, because it never ends well when that happens. So thanks for everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you have a lovely, lovely weekend. Stay safe, stay well, and as always, look after those children. We'll see you soon, everyone. Cheers, Danny.
Don't
Cheers,
live drunk.
Don't live drunk. Yeah, absolutely. Night all.
It's all right, wasn't it?
I just got to quickly call